Well, howdy from sunny, for the moment, Arizona. That's right, for the moment. It's supposed to rain tonight, tomorrow actually, 100% chance of rain. But where am I in Arizona? Well, let me show you around here. So I'm just in a random spot off of a random dirt road, not too far from Interstate 10, which is on the other side of that hill there. But it's been a nice little spot for the past, 3 nights, I think. Time to move on. Like I said, I'm heading on down to southern Arizona. I was going to stop over in that quartzite place just to experience it for a couple days, just like I did last year. But I thought, I can find a lot more beauty out here in the random spots. So that's what I did. So the plan now is just to head on down to southern Tucson. I got a place to stay actually for a few weeks. But in the meantime, today, let's see what we can find. I think I've got something really random looking to take a look at. It has to do with satellites. So let's go take a look and see what that's all about. Got a really nice spot up here on this hill. Really good view. And even though it's relatively close to the interstate, you can probably see it far off in the distance there. Not a whole lot of noise. This road was a little bit narrow in spots. In fact, where I stopped, which was a good spot to stop anyway, where I had to stop because the road was washed out on the other side. So, anyway. Fun stuff. Okay, we're here in another random spot in the desert of Arizona, and let's go take a look what we found. It doesn't look like much, just some random kind of flat, scraped out area in the desert. With a long shadow. Hello there. But it's actually has some history behind it. So let's go take a look and see what that history is. And while we're walking over here, I'll tell you that the history has something to do with that way up there. That's right, it's got something to do with satellites. So way back in the late 50s, you know, the U-2 spy plane was flying across the Soviet Union and other places. At the same time, spy satellites were starting to be developed, and especially after the U-2 was shot down, the spy satellite development went into full gear. And so there was a project called Corona. That started in the late 50s. And the idea behind Corona was that the U.S. would put these cameras on these satellites. And then they were film cameras. And they would launch them and then take pictures of Soviet Union, maybe China, I don't know, China at the time, and other spots on Earth. And then the film would be jettisoned from the satellite and then come back down to Earth via parachute. And then a airplane would snag the parachute while it was floating down and then take the film to where it needed to go so that everybody could analyze it. The first airplanes were old C-119s from the end of World War II and during the Korean War era. And then they eventually started using C-130s. But anyway, the Corona satellites were launched, and in order for them to have an accurate take on where they were taking pictures, out here in the middle of the desert, before really anything was here, now the city of Casa Grande is out there somewhere, and there's a main road that goes down to Tucson. But the United States government built a number of these quote-unquote calibration points out here in the middle of the desert. So these calibration points were out here. There's, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 of them still out here in the desert. And the satellite would hone in on these as a point to calibrate themselves so they knew where they were in space and where we knew where they were in space. And so that when they were snapping pictures in, say, over Moscow at the corner of 5th and Main, they know that they were snapping pictures over the corner of 5th and Main. But anyway, so that's what we have out here in the desert in near Casa Grande, Arizona. And the interesting thing about this Corona program is that it was first to keep its cover so nobody would suspect what was going on. It was first, the first cover story was that it was part of a project to collect biological samples in space and then send them back down via capsule. Then after that, they just finally completely hid the program, and whenever a launch was made, they just basically called it Department of Defense launch and didn't put any information as to what it's about. But anyway, Corona was the first reconnaissance satellites that the U.S. government put up in space and used. The follow-on project was called the Keyhole satellites. And so this Corona project, along with the first generation of the keyholes, went through 1972, and then the following succession of the keyhole satellites went up through, I think, 1992. And just to give you an idea of what they could see on the ground, the first satellites had a resolution of about 50 feet. So they can make out objects as small as 50 feet across. And when the program finally ended, they got that down to a resolution of being able to see objects as small as 3 feet across. And of course, spy satellites today, you know, we don't know what they are. You always hear the rumors that they can read license plates. But the resolution is much better these days. And of course, oh, here's something else too. So on these Corona satellites, they would take the pictures, the film would be automatically put in a capsule, and the satellite ejects it so that it can be recovered in the air. Then there was a follow-on version where the satellite had the film, and the film was actually developed inside the satellite, and then the resulting picture was scanned, and then the scan was electronically sent. So I guess that would be perhaps the precursor of the fax machine, except it started up in space. So that's kind of interesting on how all that stuff developed. But anyway, so this is the Corona satellite calibration point, one of 4 or 5 or 6 in Arizona desert near Casa Grande. And speaking of Casa Grande, oh, speaking of this Corona satellite, I'll put a link down into the description here. I found a film that kind of gives a history of the Corona program. It's almost an hour long, so if you want to click on it later on, you can watch it. So anyway, that's the Corona project, the Corona satellite calibration point. And so now, there's one more kind of off-the-wall thing that I found. It's in Casa Grande. So let's go take a look at that. And, oh, it looks like it's probably about the right time of day to go see it. So let's go take a look. It's a museum, but not just any old museum. It's an outdoor museum, and not just any old outdoor museum, but it's actually